Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. Now, we have a great show for you today. First, we have the closing arguments in the Telus murder trial today, and it's not going to take the jury along on that one. The story about Chris Watts' statements that he made about his wife being a control freak. Well, guess what? I was a little surprised that there are people out there defending Chris Watts and his comments that she almost deserved to be killed. I wish I could tell you what happened in the Delphi hearing on Friday, but I can't because it was closed to the public. But I'll tell you what we do know. A death penalty case for a child abuse charge, and only in the great state of California could somebody be sentenced to 350 years and be eligible to get out of prison after 20. A news anchorman, he's got himself in a little bit of trouble. And yes, you can't even make this up, even in Florida. And yes, FreePavelDurov, and then our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment below. Hit that little bell for notifications. And yes, you can listen to us anytime on any of your favorite podcasting apps. We are still here in the construction zone. Everything layered in a fine covering of dust and sanding. But it doesn't really affect our studio other than we're getting a new door. But construction, why do I hate it? Well, it always takes longer than you think it will, and it always costs twice as much than they told you it was going to cost. Hate doing construction projects, ladies and gentlemen, but be patient with us. We'll get it done here. All right. First on the docket. That's right. The attorneys are expected to give their closing arguments today in the murder of the former Clark County Public Administrator, Robert Telus, in regards to the killing of the Las Vegas Review-Journal investigative reporter Jeff German. Now, testimony concluded on Friday after prosecutors called a total of 28 witnesses, and Telus' defense attorneys called 6 witnesses, including Mr. Telus himself. Now, he gave a narrative testimony to the jury without being interrupted by, questions and answers by his attorneys before facing cross-examination from the prosecutors. Now, prosecutors have accused Mr. Telus of lying in wait for German outside the reporter's home on September 2nd of 2022 while wearing a large straw hat and an orange reflective vest. There's video in the neighborhood that captured a distance image of an assailant confronting German on the side of the journalist's house. Now, prosecutors have said that Telus killed German over articles the journalist had written about Telus' conduct as the Clark County Public Administrator. Now, the state's evidence against Mr. Telus include, first, his own DNA found underneath German's fingernail, surveillance footage, and items found at the home matching the alleged assailant's clothing. Detectives have also testified that Telus' phone contained download Google Maps images of German's house, and his work computer contained information on German's car and his home address. Now, the defense has tried to paint a picture of Telus as a public servant who was just simply trying to expose corruption within the public administrator's office. And Telus told the jury himself that he was looking into independent administrators in probate cases regarding property of people who died there in Clark County. He alleged that the homes were being flipped for profit without benefiting the families of the deceased, and that he was fighting Compass Realty and Management over these sales. He says, quote, "Somebody framed me for this, and I believe it's Compass Realty." Well, he also believes it's for the work that he's done against them. So they went to all this trouble of planting his DNA underneath the victim's fingernails. That's how meticulously they planned this. He said that the company has called his accusations unconscionable and irresponsible. Now, the police department and the lead detectives also testified that he investigated both the kickback scheme reported by Telus and accusations that Telus himself was receiving kickbacks. Well, the detective said he found no evidence that Telus received kickbacks, and the Clark County District Attorney's Office determined there was not enough evidence for the prosecution in the alleged scheme that Tellus testified about. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see. I think it's going to be a quick verdict in the Tellus matter. We'll have to wait and see. I've never seen a narrative by a defendant on a stand. Usually it's question, answer by the attorney to the defendant, and then obviously cross-examination. But apparently in the great state of Nevada, you can get up there and just ramble. And ramble he did, ladies and gentlemen. Probably one of the worst defendants that I think I possibly have ever seen. We've got all those videos. We're bringing it to you live, and if it's there, we'll bring it to you. All right. Next on the docket, that's right, Chris Watts, and that's his wife. His wife was a control freak, so basically she deserved to die. We brought you this story last week, and I was a little surprised. I'm not shocked, but I was surprised, okay? Because nothing shocks me anymore. But there were actually people in the comments stating that basically she deserved it. It wasn't, she drove him to it. This is what happens. People just blaming Shanann, okay? But don't remember, he also killed his kids, right? So like I said, he's shamelessly blamed his wife, Shanann, for his affair years ago after he's killed his entire family to be with his alleged mistress. Now, Watts called his late wife a control freak, and he sits in jail for the murder of his wife, 2 young daughters, and unborn child back in 2018. Now, Watts admitted to strangling his wife, Shanann, to death, then suffocating his 2 young girls, Bella, who was 4 at the time, and Celeste, 3. All right? And apparently they begged for him not to do this. And this is why we're talking about this again. I know there's some people, I'm tired of Chris Watts. Don't give this guy. No, pure evil, ladies and gentlemen. People need to know what it is, that it exists, okay? And that pure evil walks among us, ladies and gentlemen. And Watts, for all intents and purposes, looked like a regular Joe out there on the street. But clearly, he was not. Now, Watts, like I said, has never given an exact motive behind the sickening murders, but many suspect it obviously had to be with the fact that he wanted to be with Nicole Kessinger, his then mistress/girlfriend at the time. And there was text evidence that proved that Watts and his wife experienced some marital difficulties, and that the father began seeing Miss Kessinger only 2 months before killing his family. Well, then we have Dylan Talman, who was Watts' cellmates, that says that Watts allegedly blamed his wife for his affair, which led to the murders. This guy accepts no responsibility for anything. It's never anybody else's fault. I think they have a word for that. I think it's called narcissist. He apparently, Watts also complained to his cellmate that she was just really, really busy with her job and everything it required. And then he met Nicole, and just things weren't perfect, right? She was just everything my wife wasn't like with me. She was just nice and not a control freak. We could make decisions together. Well, probably because, Watts is a coward. He's a man-child. We have a term in our office. We refer to it as is a TMM, too much mommy. Mommy took care of everything. Then the wife took care of everything, and he didn't like the way mommy took care of everything. He wanted to feel like a man. There you go. Anyway, now, Miss Kessinger did cooperate with the police. Obviously, she's never been charged with anything, and she's changed her name, all that good stuff. Presumption of innocence. There's no evidence to claim that she was involved directly. In fact, she claims that she was quite shocked to find out that he was still married, referring to Chris Watts, and that his wife was actually 15 weeks pregnant when she started having an affair with him. Anyway, so then August of 2018, Watts dumped his pregnant wife's body in this shallow grave. Take a look at this. And then threw the bodies of his young girls into the oil tanks. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Look at those tanks. Frank, put up a big picture of the oil tanks. Frank, show now the hole that he shoved his 4- and 3-year-old daughters into that tank, ladies and gentlemen. And when they dropped into that tank, all of their body filled up with all of that oil, and he left them there to hopefully never be found again. That is pure evil, ladies ladies and gentlemen. And you say, oh, you're just going over this again, Scott, because it's sensational. No, it's for the people that somehow believe that Chris Watts deserves any mercy whatsoever. And for all the women out there that want to write him letters, okay? He killed his wife, dumped her in a shallow grave, killed his daughters, killed his 2 daughters, ladies and gentlemen, shoved their little bodies through that little hole. And I'm sure they didn't just drop right in, right? With their shoulders. I think there was some point where he actually said that he had to push them in, or probably push them in with his boot to get them in there, ladies and gentlemen. That, ladies and gentlemen, is pure evil. Pure evil. You can see by that photograph there, the oil tank has 8-inch diameter hatch at the top where he shoved his daughters through their lifeless little bodies through that little hole. Watts threw each girl's body into a different tank, and medical examiners reported scratches on Bella's body after being shoved through the narrow hatch. Like I said, picture of the grave and the sheet that she was found in. Now, obviously, Watts originally said he only killed his wife after he saw that she was the one, in fact, that strangled the children. But that was soon found to be completely false. He pled guilty in open court to killing all 3 and pled guilty ultimately to 9 charges. Those included 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree murder where the victims were under the age of 12, a single count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy for the unborn child that Shanann had, and 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body for burying Shanann's remains in a shallow grave and dumping the corpse of his little girls into those storage tanks, ladies and gentlemen. Now, he is serving a multiple 3 consecutive life sentences, which means he will never, ever, ever get out. But I just want you to know, we say this all the time, ladies and gentlemen. I've been doing criminal defense for nearly 30 years. And evil exists. And yes, everybody deserves a right to their constitutional rights and make the government prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. But once you've pled guilty or been found guilty, the world needs to know. And people need the truth. Okay? Yes, case is old. I get it. But people should not forget what this man did to those 2 little girls. Horrific. Next, what's going on at that Delphi hearing last Friday? Oh, if we only knew. But guess what? We don't. So transparency was apparently non-existent in the Carroll County court for the status hearing on the Delphi murder case last Friday. Here's what we do know. Judge Francis Seagull ordered that the first part of the hearing to be held behind closed doors, no reporters, no one from the public allowed. I've never seen that. Like I said, 30 years of practicing, open courtroom. People can come and watch. Only time I've ever seen that recently is in the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case, and I don't practice in Idaho, and apparently in Indiana as well. I've never seen, and I've handled lots of bad cases, lots of bad facts, but to conduct hearings and status conferences outside of the public hearing, it's unheard of. I think it's freaking blatant violation of obviously a right to a public trial. Now we can say, well, it's just a status conference, right? It's not really a trial. I think it encompasses all of the critical stages of the proceedings need to be done in public so people can see. Anyway, apparently after a brief recess, members of the media were supposed to be allowed into the courtroom for the second half of the hearing. But after another 35 minutes had passed, a deputy sheriff came out and told everybody that there will be no public hearing on Friday. And that was all he would tell the media that was there. Now, moments later, the prosecutor came out and apparently went into a room with the family of Abby Williams and Libby German. And Richard Allen's attorneys, Bradley Rozzi, came out next and took Allen's family away to tell them what happened behind closed doors. When asked what happened, Rozzi said nothing. My guess is, ladies and gentlemen, they're working on a plea bargain. They're working on a plea of some type, and they're trying to resolve it. And they're trying to keep the court informed. That's my hunch. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, on Friday, though, the defense had filed another motion that would shorten the length of the time that the Indiana Department of Corrections and the Indiana Attorney General can take to respond to their requests for documents. And they're making the request so that both sides can have enough time to review those documents before the trial, which is set to start in October. The prosecution also filed a motion to prevent the defense from interviewing third-party suspects under oath that the defense team said is responsible for the murders. The prosecution's claim that the testimony is not relevant and would not prove that Richard Allen was in fact innocent. Now, because nobody was allowed in the courtroom, we really have no idea if those motions were talked about in court at all. And everyone associated with the case is apparently under this gag order and cannot legally talk about the case. Now, it's unclear if we're going to find out what happened last Friday. We'll just have to wait and see. I don't know what's going on in these cases, ladies and gentlemen. There is nothing. So we just talked about a case where a man killed his 4 and 3-year-old daughter and shoved them down an oil tank. But yet somehow we can't be trusted to handle the information that's going on in a courtroom. If Allen is going to enter into a plea and that's what they're going to set it for, fine, let us know. If they're going to suppress evidence, they need to let us know. We, ladies and gentlemen, have a right to know what's going on. And although the judge says we don't have a right to see it via video and what takes place in the courtroom, the public and the press have a right to be there, and all courtrooms should be open to the public. The only time I've ever seen anything closed is in juvenile matters, but that's it. That's it. Unbelievable to me. Unbelievable that a judge would close a courtroom to everybody else. Unbelievable. Can't believe it. Next, something you don't see every day, a child abuse case where the child passed away, was killed, murdered, allegedly. A death penalty charge. That's right. A PhD student is accused of murdering her friend's 6-week-old baby and apparently was a little surprised by the prosecutor's decision to pursue the death penalty if she is in fact convicted. Nicole Virzi is in custody awaiting a pretrial conference, and she's been charged with murder of Leon Katz while she was babysitting him at the family's Pittsburgh home in June. Now, her attorneys had discussed with her the possibility that the state could pursue the death penalty, but he frankly wasn't expecting it to happen. Needless to say, Ms. Virzi was a little surprised as well. Now, police allege she is responsible for inflicting a fracture to baby Leon's skull and several bleeds on the brain picked up by a CT scan. She was also accused of injuring Leon's twin brother, Ari, who survived. Now, affidavits filed last week show that the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office is seeking the death penalty against Virzi. The filing, which laid out the reasons for seeking the death penalty, include the defendant committed the killing while in the perpetration of a felony, and the offense was committed by means of torture. Now, Virzi was trusted friend of the baby's parents, Ethan Katz and Savannah Roberts, who was watching the twins while on her college break. Now, police allege she told the police she'd gone into the kitchen to get one of the twins a bottle when she suddenly heard screaming. When she returned, she said the baby had fallen out of the bouncer chair, and then she immediately called 911. Now, she spotted an injury to Ari's groin area, notified his parents, and continued to babysit Leon as they took Ari to the hospital to get his injuries assessed. Now, according to the court filings, a doctor told investigators the injuries sustained by both twins are consistent with having been sustained as a result of child abuse, and these are inflicted injuries that are not natural and not accidental. Now, Ms. Virzi maintains her innocence, and we'll give it to her. Now, like I said, she is a PhD student focusing on behavioral medicine. Now, according to her bio at the UC San Diego, University of California, San Diego, her research aims to explore the complex interplay between psychological factors such as depression, stress, negative affect, and trauma, and critical health outcomes and behaviors. Well, if she is convicted, she will certainly have plenty of people to study that meet that criteria, now won't she? Like I said, it's very unusual. Usually what you see in homicide cases is they want the maximum penalty, life without the possibility of parole. And then when a baby dies, even though oftentimes they can't prove first-degree murder, they always charge it as child abuse resulting in death. Like somehow a child's death is worth less than an adult. You would think it'd be the other way around. I don't know. Anyway, I thought that story was interesting because you just don't see a death penalty case on a child abuse resulting in death. We'll have to wait and see. Probably pretty unlikely unless they can really prove torture to that young child. All right, and next on the docket, only in California, right? So a pedophile, that's right, a pedophile, that is somebody that likes prepubescent children, ladies and gentlemen, that is the technical definition, was sentenced to 350 years in prison for abducting and molesting a 5-year-old girl back in 2003. But guess what? Under a new California law, Charles William Mix, who was 47 when he kidnapped his friend's daughter and smuggled her over state lines to Utah before subjecting her to his little twisted fantasies in June of that year. Anyway, her family believed he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. But 20 years later, now Mr. Mix is only 69. He could be freed under California's new elderly parole program due to his age after serving just 6% of his sentence. Well, the victim, who's now 27, she thinks this is an absolute outrage. Apparently not ready to speak about the horrors that she endured, but her relatives have written a heart-wrenching letter imploring officials at the California Department of Corrections and Parole to keep Mr. Mix in prison while blasting the program as offering a pardon light to felons. Now, in the letter, they slam Mix as a vile predator who was old enough to be her grandfather, while quoting the damning final remarks made by the judge who sentenced Mr. Mix to the 350 years behind prison. The judge says Mix was convicted on a variety of felony charges, including willful child cruelty, kidnapping to commit robbery or rape, lewd acts with a child under 14, burglary, and more. He had been living with the family in Riverdale at the time of the abduction, and on the morning of June 2nd of 2003, the girl's father realized that she was missing and immediately called 911. The next day, the police located Mr. Mix and the victim hundreds of miles away in Richfield, Utah, after a passerby noticed them and reported them to the police. Mr. Mix fled with the child in a vehicle which had some weird scribblings on the interior. No need to go into all that. Anyway, police also uncovered sexually explicit photographs that Mr. Mix had taken of the girl, along with love letters he had written to her as well. Now, he later admitted to the Utah detectives that he slept with the naked girl naked himself. Anyway, their letter goes on to quote the scathing final remarks made by the judge in this case, Judge Kristen Thierbach, who sentenced Mr. Mix to the 350 years in jail. Thierbach told Mix at the time, "The human race has yet to create a punishment that adequately addresses what you did to this little girl. And I suspect one reason for that is that what you did to her is inhuman." The judge went on to explain that Mix could only be freed from prison if he received a pardon, and I dare say if that happens, civilization as we know it will have ceased to exist, the judge told the family. Anyway, the family letter blasts the elderly parole program as a pardon light, which could make this a horror reality. Now, under the program there in California, inmates who are 50 years or older and who have served 20 consecutive years in prison, well, they're eligible for parole. Why, do you say? Well, the elderly parole program aims to ease the financial burdens of the state of keeping elderly parole people in prison if they believe they are unlikely to commit more crimes in the future. What do we say? It's always about the money. It's always about the money, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, the parole board will consider the severity of Mr. Mix's crimes, whether he has taken responsibility and shown any remorse for his crimes at all, and whether he in fact still poses a danger to society. My guess is as long as Mr. Mix is breathing, he will pose a risk not only to society, but anyone under the age of 18. Only in California, ladies and gentlemen. Next, a news anchor. Well, he's in trouble too. And guess what? Doing inappropriate things with children's pictures. Matt Vereen, a weekend anchor and a sports reporter for a news affiliate of WACH Fox 57 in South Carolina, was taken into custody late last week and charged with 3 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. Now, the state's attorney general made this announcement, and apparently the arrest warrants obtained for public view detail how investigators with the Columbia Police Department and the Department of Homeland Security and the state's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force found child pornography on the news anchor's laptop. Arrest warrant also shows that officers found a digital photo on his MacBook of a girl between the ages of 11 and 13 in some suggestive poses. Others photos claim that he purchased a 1-minute, 32-second video of a 13-year-old girl standing over a camera and another video of a 13-year-old girl twerking in the bathroom. Investigators say they tracked Mr. Vereen down through Gmail records, Apple records, and other records that they didn't make public exactly. Anyway, Mr. Vereen has been working as a sports anchor and reporter for WACH, W-A-C-H, Fox 57 for nearly 3 years, and previously worked as a sports reporter in Springfield, Missouri. Needless to say, the WACH is saying this is obviously very severe allegations, and he's been placed on suspension pending an investigation. Well, Mr. Vereen was released on a $40,000 cash bond, and under his release, guess what? He cannot access the internet, any social media, anything outside of work, and most importantly, no contact with minors without adult supervision. Now, if he is convicted, but we'll give him the presumption of innocence, he could face up to 30 years in prison. My gosh, that's almost 10 years longer than what Mr. Mix would serve there in California for kidnapping, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody wanted to write the parole board in California for Mr. Mix, the guy that kidnapped the 5-year-old. Anyway, you can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look at some of this body cam footage. It shows a moment a Florida woman is arrested after she allegedly engaged in a lesbian threesome in a public swimming pool in front of children. Now, the woman told officers her name was Juliana, and she was seen getting a kiss on the cheek from her mother before being taken to jail. Now, the body cam footage of the incident emerged for the first time last week, and Juliana and her 2 friends who fled the scene before the police arrived were allegedly seen naked in the pool having oral sex with each other at an unidentified housing complex in St. Lucia, Florida. An employee apparently took pictures of the woman in the act after a worried mother informed him of what was allegedly taking place down by the pool, ladies and gentlemen. And when the officers from the St. Lucia County Sheriff's Office arrived, Juliana was arrested, somewhat baffled. Her boyfriend was, who she lives with at the apartment complex. Apparently, he was left quite speechless. Anyway, after finally giving the officer her name, the officer's body cam captured the property manager explaining the inappropriate image. The property manager showed officers more images of Juliana and the other 2 women that the cop described as full-on pornography. The property manager was then informed by the officer that when she approached the women with the images, they said it was weird that she had them. Well, she was trying to document the perversion that was taking place in front of the swimming pool with all the little kids. Jeez. Anyway, the property manager told the officer that at the time she said to the woman, "What's weird is that you don't have enough sense to know that you are in public places where kids are." In another clip, the employee who caught the woman explained exactly what happened before the filling out a statement to the officers. Eventually, Juliana's mother arrived on scene and asked the officers what's going on. And after hearing what her daughter got arrested for, her mother, dressed in jean shorts and a black Kiss t-shirt, looked at Juliana's boyfriend and said, "Call your daddy. She needs an attorney." Can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. All right, next, hashtag FreePavel. If you haven't heard, PavelDurov, he's a billionaire. He doesn't need our help. And he was the founder of Telegram. Now, Telegram is a messaging app, but what makes Telegram particularly interesting is it is encrypted. And Pavel has refused to give basically backdoor access to the governments around the world. And when they say take something down, they'll take it down if it's truly illegal, like images of kids and things of that nature. But just because one party doesn't like it on a particular side, they're not going to take it down. In fact, Pavel left Russia because at one point he had the Facebook of Russia, and the government told him to take down opposition posts that were being made, and he said no. He ultimately left Russia, ultimately wound up in Dubai, actually looked in several countries, including the United States, but he quickly found out when he was here on a visit to the United States that, well, the government wanted access to his back door so that they could monitor what takes place on Telegram. I mean, think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe, for example, if you were like a landlord and the police came and said, we want to put a microphone into the apartments that you manage, but you say, I just rent it, and after that I have no authority over it whatsoever. What they say or do is fine. Now they're saying to Pavel is that he could be held responsible for what other people did on his site. Could you imagine if we held Mark Zuckerberg responsible for what people put up on his site? I guess this is kind of a Silk Road type of thing. Cooperate, go along, get along, or we're finally going to get you. Anyway, PavelDurov was arrested at a French airport Saturday night as he was getting off his private jet. And they are saying that he's being held for investigation into criminal activity allegedly flourishing on Telegram due to a lack of moderation. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Could we be held responsible for what somebody says in our comment sections? That's really what they're trying to say. We have people that disagree with us all the time. We don't take it down. There's people who make, if they make true threats, we would take it down, but that's against the law. And we would just do that out of common decency. But think about it, ladies and gentlemen. That's a little scary because Telegram has 900 million active users, all right? And apparently it's quite influential in Russia, Ukraine, and other Soviet states, often serving as a key platform for unfiltered news, including during the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, needless to say, Elon Musk reposted the news with a provocative comment. It's 2030 in Europe, and you're being executed for liking a meme. Well, Durov, who famously left Russia, like I said, in 2014, after refusing government demands to shut down opposition communities on his former platform known as VK, has yet to comment on his arrest. And meanwhile, Telegram and French authorities have remained silent as the investigation continues. Anyway, makes you got to wonder, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, do you need to be worried? I don't know. And I get it. A lot of parts of the world don't have free speech like we do here in the United States. And you can say just about anything you want here in the United States. Just don't threaten somebody. And it should be true. Otherwise, you could face civil responsibility. It's only when the government gets involved and says you can't do that. That's when the First Amendment kicks in. But you can say just about whatever you want. And that's a good thing. We want to know what the crazy people are saying. We want to know what the scary people are saying, so we know where they are. Otherwise, they go underground. And frankly, people need to be exposed to their differing ideas and opinions in the world because either A, it will confirm your opinion that the other party is wrong, or you may actually say, you know what, you've got a good point there. Maybe you're right. Maybe I need to change my point of view. But we only get there if we teach people how to think, not just rely upon what is being told to them, ladies and gentlemen. Scary time in the world. Scary time. And it truly comes down to, if you don't cooperate with the governments around the world, let us have access to all of your stuff, we're going to come after you. And think about it, ladies and gentlemen. When you think of privacy, you think that things are secret, that they're not going to be exposed to the rest of the world. But the government out there always thinks that, well, we need to be able to see what's secret so that we can provide security, right? And the old adage that he who would give up his freedom for security probably deserves neither. Scary time, ladies and gentlemen. Here at Crime Talk, we're a big free speech advocate, probably because we were censored so much. And moderation is just another word for censoring, ladies and gentlemen. Think about that. And finally today, our dumb criminal of the day. check out this Florida man who was arrested for driving under the influence. That's right. His picture, he was taken about 5:30 a.m. on the misdemeanor count. His bond was set at $1,000, and he is scheduled to be arraigned later in the day. Take a look at that shirt. You got to love it, don't you? What can you say? But it makes you think of the other people that we've had as dumb criminals. Take a look at this guy. That's right. Drunk driver arrested. Got beer t-shirt. Man, in All My Friends Are Baked t-shirt. Can't forget that one. An Oklahoma man in I'm a Drunk t-shirt. A motorist in a Drunk as Shit t-shirt. And a father wearing Greatest Dad t-shirt, jailed for child endangerment. But let's not forget the man in the Breaking Bad t-shirt arrested for manufacturing of meth. And man, I have a drinking problem t-shirt. They got arrested for drunk driving. And let's not forget, I love midget porn. You can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. Dumb criminals of the day. All right, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. And remember, yes, the Constitution matters.